Okay, hello, greetings and welcome. Let's have a look at some energies on uprooting. So what we want to do is get your partner into a back stance. We're going to touch the middle of the forearm towards the elbow and touch down onto their base and release. So the moment you get this tension line down and release, you'll feel a pop in your partner's fascia. As that pop happens, their balance is going to come up and their balance is going to reground itself and they'll return back to center. So this spectrum of elasticity, you want to tune into that spectrum of compressing into their base, compressing onto their bones, giving them deeper, more connection to the ground, and releasing and letting everything rise. Once you've grounded in and then lifted, then we want to slide underneath and go in and stretch into the gap, and just to bring our partner up. Once we've gotten into that gap, now we're going to breathe into the gap and circle our partner around in a circle. Now, as we go around the edge of his balance, I want you to feel his toes, feel the toes connect, feel the blade, feel the heel, and then mentally note the gaps in the line, where those gaps are as you circle. Now, depending on the level of training of the person you're demonstrating on as to how deep they will ground themselves and compensate for the circling. A beginner has a relatively stiff body, where someone who's been training a long time will have looseness inside of this rotation. So you're starting off around the feet, and then you spin around the knees, and you just feel the gaps in the knees. And then you go onto the hip, and then you rotate around the hip. And usually the hip has tension bumps in it, so you want to feel those tension bumps. Then you go to the center of gravity of the body, around the navel area. Then you go to the solar plexus, get a circle or two in there, then go up to the shoulders. When you do the shoulders, you can bring all the way out to your hands and circle. And then from there, what I want you to do is go down to the feet, and bring it up to the hands, and then go down to the feet and bring it up to the hands, and then go down to the feet and bring it up to the hands as you circle. And what this does is it creates a spiral going up, and as you spiral up, you're going to find points of tension inside your partner's body. So you've mentally noted around their base, around their knees, around their hips, around their center of gravity, around the solar plexus rib cage, around the shoulders, and tension going out back onto the bridge. And then once you've noted those places, as you compress down, I want you to compress into those places. So on the front of his hip, he's got a bit of a line. On the diagonal of his knee, he's got a line. On the outside edge of his ankle foot, there's a line. So I'll connect to them. And then what I want to do is compress into those tension points and then just release through those tension points and pop your partner's base. So you want to have at least one disconnect on the ankle foot area, one on the knee, one on the hip, one on the solar plexus, and one there. And then connect to all of them, and then bring the energy up through them. Connect, and so forth. Connect, and then, so I'm finding those places inside his body, compressing them, then expanding my mental space, and just letting the energy come up very, very softly and gently. Now, once you've found how to wave through your partner's body, then you can drop your own hip and start working on how to bring your partner's balance out a little bit more by working the diagonals of those feeling qualities in your partner's body. And the better you know your partner, when you skew the energy, let's say across his ankle here, that way, and I put something into it, now his knee and hip is a little bit more out, and I've got that line a bit more. So every time I play, I mentally note where his structure is breaking. Now under here, there's a line in which there's a tension line, so I want to pass it through that tension. You notice how his hip's reacting when I touch this hook there, and his body is unique to him. Everybody has a different formula, a different way their body is going to disconnect. And this is at the mechanical phase. This is where I'm just tuning through the fascia, expanding a bit of life force through my partner, and looking for reactivity. Once you're at that level where there's you've established some gaps, then you can relax into the energy a bit higher, so it's a bit lighter, to wave energy through those gaps. So now I'm using a little bit too much pressure as I'm doing this because I'm still physically touching the gap. So now I want to soften back and just move through the field so there's no pushing in anymore. I want to remove this and just feel what's there and move the field. So his upper body is still moving before his lower body. It means I've got to pay more attention to the lower body. So I catch that more. So that was better. Got his heel to go before his shoulder. So now his shoulder went first. That's I'm not concentrating in the right place. That's better. I've got his hip and foot to go first. So you'll find that as your awareness moves up and down your partner's body, where you pay attention to is where the first reactions are going to happen. If you're thinking up here, this is where the reaction is going to happen. If I'm thinking down there, then I can get the reaction to happen there. So his hip went first because of that hook around his foot, and it circled around his hip. And this training is, what you want to go through is feel every weakness around each foot, around the knee, around the waist, around the ribs, around the shoulders and the back, and his bridge. And once you played with it a little bit, start pointing it out to your partner so they know that's something that they got to work on. So here, what I'm going to do, instead of hooking his hip and doing this to him, I'm going to hook his hip. And I'm just going to release that energy and dissolve that out. See how his body is dropping now? Because I'm releasing that tension in his hip. So I'm making him more grounded rather than less grounded. Because I figured out how to make him less grounded, now I can dissolve the problem. So the next one was that the little hook he has across his knee. So I'm astrally breathing into his knee, just softening that energy out of his knee. And if your partner floats, that's okay, because I'm expanding the space around his astral body to dissolve that stuff out of his knees. Then around the feet and ankle, there's a couple diagonal hooks on his ankles. Where I want to get into those ankles and empty them out. And dissolve that tension out of his body. At the end of this, even though you're floating your partner a little bit, you want to leave them more grounded than when you started. So around the hips, there's a little bit of inside quad tension in here. So what I'm going to do is hook onto that quad tension and soften it. I just want to dissolve that stuff out of inside of his hips. Now on the back of the hip, there's a lump on both around the inside of the joint. So I want to dissolve that out of his body as well. Now around the rib cage here, it's very, 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 very clean, but around the back, he's got stuff stuck to the back of his lungs. So I want to hook into that stuff and clean that out. Anything you can work with within your feeling in your body, you can work with another person's body equally. So whatever you can feel, you can influence. From here, I go up to his shoulders. And he's got strong, weak muscles right next to each other. And right where the muscle bridges, the weak muscle gets tense to protect itself from the strong muscle overexerting and changing across to the weak. So what I want to do is just torque a little bit in here, and so I'm grabbing inside his wrist, I'm pulling into there, and then I can feel that line, and I melt that line out and dissolve that energy. Then I do the same across the back, but I just use a slightly different angle to get a bit more under. And get under the armpit there. And dissolve that energy out. And he's got some stuff on this side of his neck, through there, and a little bit there. So what I want to do is just hook onto that, and then once I feel it, and just start dissolving that. Excellent. Then around his elbows, I'm just going to spin around the elbow a little bit, feel the connect to the facial web, and then dissolve. And then feel the wrists. Okay, and then relax the energy all the way up to the top of your partner's crown, up the neck. Okay, so we used the physical facial web to connect to these points. Then we started relaxing through the 4-cycle breath into the astral body to relax and release these astral bumps. Then we're going to look at the way his mind and his balance relates to these energies and his physical body. And this is a relationship between the mental body and the astral body through the mental matrix. So what we want to do is become sensitive to that and just expand it ever so gently. If you expand the mental matrix too much, people get nausea. If you do it just enough for the balance to go, then you have access to clean and release it without any side effects. So while I'm cleaning the mental matrix, I'm doing small circles with his balance. What this does, as his balance moves around, his mental awareness pays attention to his own balance, so he doesn't unconsciously reground himself. I'm basically occupying him so I can work on that mental matrix and release what I feel. Now the only thing that should be in the mental matrix is magnetic fluid that binds the mind and the astral body and the physical body together. And you basically want to dissolve anything else that you encounter. Most people have different types of wedges, little spikes, like little sparkles, energy, a bit like grains of sand, all different types of groupings of energy. And you want to be dissolving them out of the mental matrix. If you don't, the person's going to get nerve problems. So you want to clean them up, and that'll reduce those nerve problems right off. Okay, once you've done that, then you go back to where you started and just squeeze the bones and just press the person back onto the ground. Get them to relax back into their body because you've got everything a little bit more open than usual. Just press in and let your training partner return back to the normal physical grounded self, and they can bend the knees and lock in a little bit. Okay, so when you do this with a partner, it'll be dependent on your skill sets. If you're good with vital breathing, you do the first section. If you've been doing the astral 4-cycle breath and tuning the breath for astral breathing, you can work on releasing what you feel astrally, because those physical tension points are astral accumulations. So you release them in the astral. If you've been playing with people's balance a lot and you're very familiar with the mental body and stretching out the mental matrix to capture balance, then you just expand the mental body till it floats, and then you scan through the mental matrix and clean these little grains of sand and these thorns and wedges and all types of things that get stuck in there. They usually get stuck there from emotional traumas and stresses, and you just want to dissolve them with your mind. If you're sensitive to them, you just relax and dissolve, and they disappear. So you want to clean as many of those out as you can. At this point, you'd give the receiver a glass of water, get them to sit down, relax, and take a moment to reground themselves. You wouldn't let them jump into a car and or a vehicle and go home, because it takes anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes for people to reground themselves, depending on the sensitivity and how much energy you released. If you release a lot of energy out of a person's body, they have to reconnect themselves. They have to reconnect their balance. They have to reconnect how they feel. They have to reconnect their body. And this takes a few minutes. A glass of water gets them grounded much more quickly. And so you'd sit them down and let them figure out how long they want to stay seated for with this type of exercise. You should do this at least once a day with your training partner. And if you're doing high intensity Kung Fu, you finish your session with this. You clean out all the tension and stress your partner developed through the session, and you make sure that your partner's got a nice sense of openness and cleanness and clearness in the mental, astral, physical body when they finish. When you get used to this, the side effect of the nausea, the dizziness, the "oh, I've lost my balance" feeling disappears, and you can spend 5-10 minutes on your partner, they just spend 5-10 minutes on you. This is how you wind down your session and warm down your body, by doing this clearing. Okay, thanks for your help, Nathan. Okay, thanks for your time, everyone, and see you in the next video.